It's really interesting thinking about my mum writing down the recipes and how she must have, as a young lady, young woman, sat down having a particular meal, really liking it, and sitting down and writing the recipe. And I was just thinking about, if I did that, I think I would really remember everything vividly. I'd remember the meal. I'd remember the person. And I think the reason is, I think that, because I was trying to think, well, why is it my mum can't seem to remember things connected with those meals and those recipes as well as I was hoping she might? And, you know, is it because she's just getting on in years? Of course, your memory does go when you get older. But I think it's also to do with the way we are these days. I mean, if I eat something that I really like, I'll whisk out my mobile phone and I'll type it into a search engine and see how it's made. That's what I did with rosti, and it was fascinating and interesting. And although I've tried to cook it myself so many times, I mean, there's dishes I remember eating, and I used to go to a restaurant. I remember one particular dish, spaghetti alla carbonara, when I was studying Italian in Florence, and going to a restaurant and having this spaghetti with, well, it's basically with cream and eggs and bacon, and just loving this dish and then wanting to recreate it and thinking, you know, as I'm eating it, I think, what's in this? What are these flavors? What's in here? And really, really simple. And, you know, going back, experimenting, putting egg in and just having spaghetti covered in scrambled eggs, which was pretty revolting. And then realizing, okay, there's something else. I need some cream in it and, you know, a bit of cheese. And you basically, you get there. There was no, you know, search engine to find out. You had to experiment and get there yourself. Of course, you could ask someone, how do you make that? That's obviously what my mum did. How do you make that? She loved the food and she wanted the recipe so she could try and recreate it. I think there's something deep I have to think about it in the whole idea of trying to recreate something, reconjure that taste. And it, you know, what's so frustrating about rosti is my total inability to recreate that amazing taste of that simple dish that I had in those mountains in Switzerland, and my just total inability to really get it right is so frustrating, and I have tried so many times. I think the other thing is that, you know, if I took the time to actually write a recipe down by hand, I think that process of writing itself these days is so significant. I mean, I just don't even know the last time I actually wrote something. Forms are all filled in on the internet. Sometimes when I write, it's like my hand is like, it's like weird. It's like exercising when you haven't taken any exercise for months. You're like, oh my God, I can hardly breathe. And my hand feels like that when I start to write. So I think if I did write down a recipe, it would itself, the act of writing would be so significant that I think it would sort of imprint the memory firmly on my mind. And if I had to take the trouble of writing it down, it would perhaps force me to remember the whole situation much more vividly. That's what I think. That's why I figured out that if I wrote something down today, I would probably remember it a lot more. But that was just normal for in my mum's time. That's what you did. You wrote things down, and she not only wrote them down, then she took the trouble to type them up and put them into a file as well, because so she could read it better. Kitty's cake. I'm looking forward to making that. That's clearly one of the most used recipes in the book. I mean, you can see the stains and the splashes all around the pages. It's just obviously the one that's been open a lot while cooking's been going on. It's fascinating how those pages all tell a story. Food. you know, the other thing I think about food, funnily enough, is as a kid, the things, you know, that there was, me and my brother were so different, and still are, funnily enough, in our taste for food. It's just extraordinary. We're, you know, from the same family, from, you know, more or less the same genes. You know, what makes one person like one type of food and another person, and we're not like years apart, we're pretty close in terms of our age. But, you know, my brother always liked, you know, baked beans on toast and like dead simple stuff, nothing complicated. And, you know, my favorite dish was sweet and sour pork ribs. I mean, you know, what a totally different eating experience. And that's, you know, it's funny when my mum talks about me and my brother, that's one of the things that comes up, what we liked to eat. I wonder if anyone else has that same experience, that when you talk about your youth, when you talk about your childhood, one of the things that helps you remember and what was significant for you as a child is the things you liked to eat. And did your parents cook different dishes for both of you because you like different things, or for 5 of you, or like in my house there's like 11 kids? We're not going to cook 11 different dishes. Like I say, what do you think? This is a restaurant? This is not a restaurant. Eat what's in front of you. Eat what's there. We're all going to eat the same thing. If you don't like it, and this is I learned this from my mum, you can have a bit of toast and butter. It's one of the sad things that parents let their kids get away with complaining and whinging and not eating stuff. And the reality is that if you train your kids from a young age to eat a variety of foods, they will have a varied palate. And even you just sometimes need to give them a little bit of food, like a little bit of broccoli, just something so small and insignificant that they don't even really taste it. But bit by bit by bit, they'll get used to it, they'll get used to the experiences, they'll get used to the taste. It's extraordinary. Even in my house, you know, like one of my kids, he'll eat anything, and others, they don't. And it's really weird. Like I'm pretty open to eating everything, but I can't stand raw tomatoes. I mean, even just saying raw tomatoes makes me feel queasy. It's weird. And it's funny that some of my kids are the same. They don't like raw tomatoes. Why? Is it just because I don't like it, or because they have the same issues of it's not the taste so much, it's the texture, the sort of combination of sliminess, and then the tomato itself is the sort of semi-crunchy. Anyway, it just makes me feel weird. It's like, you know, when someone has that thing, you scratch your nails on the blackboard, and some people just can't stand that. For me, raw tomatoes is like that. Why? I don't mind. Cooked, I love them. Raw, I can't. Why is that? It's just so weird. Food is amazing. If there's one dish that I connect with visiting my mum here in Portugal, it's chicken liver pate. Almost without fail, when my mum knows I'm coming, she'll have cooked me made me a pot of chicken liver pate, and that's what I'll have probably every breakfast or every other breakfast for a whole week while I'm staying here. And I have it with the mafra, the local Portuguese mafra bread, which is the sort of rustic country bread, and it just doesn't taste quite the same with any other bread, to tell you the truth. A delicious combination. So I'm not even working from a recipe here. I sort of know it a little bit in my head. Lots of onions and chicken livers and eggs. So the thing about chicken livers, one of the things they recommend is that it's one of the things that's quite important that you try and get organic chicken livers. Because obviously the liver is what filters out poisons and stuff, so it can be a little bit concentrated on there. So I don't think these are organic. As long as you're not eating too much, it's okay. Now, one of the things that my mum says you have to do is, she says you have to spend a lot of time removing these bits of fat, and if there's any skin, sometimes there's sort of skin on the liver, and you have to remove it, and it's a lot of hard work. Well, not for me, it's not, because I just don't bother with that. I just don't understand the point. You fry it all up with the onions and put it in the blender. It's so simple. You really don't need to waste a lot of time for a few little bits of skin and fat that are all going to get pureed anyway, and I don't notice the difference. So I deviate a little bit from my mum's recipe in that she will only use butter, although in this particular instance I might just stick to her recipe and only use butter. I tend to use olive oil and a bit of butter, or sometimes only olive oil, but maybe I do a 50-50 mix. And the other thing that I can't resist is a little bit of garlic and a little bit of cayenne pepper to give it a slightly chilly taste, which I will probably also leave out because my mum's not a big fan of too much chili. But that's the only thing I add to it, but it really doesn't need anything. I mean, this dish is the epitome of simple food. There are a couple of dishes that my mum cooks, and they really are the epitome of simple food. And this chicken liver pate is one of them. Now, we start with a lot of onions, so I'm going to estimate, and I would say, and I'm just looking, so I'm looking at like 1, 2, probably 3, 4 onions to cook with the liver, and there's another couple of onions that I'm going to fry up in butter, and they're going to be fried up separately because that acts as a sort of layer of butter and onions on top of the chicken liver pate afterwards that sort of seals in the moisture and prevents it drying out. So you'll see how it turns out. So you don't need to be too sophisticated chopping your onions here because they're all going to get fried up anyway. And the great thing about this is not a dish that really takes a huge amount of time or effort. It's quick, it's easy, and it's really delicious, mashallah. You may not like, a lot of people don't like chicken livers, not a lot of people, but I know people who don't like chicken livers. They don't like the texture of chicken livers. I mean, I love chicken livers, to be honest. I probably eat quite a lot of chicken livers. And there's a really delicious way you can just fry up chicken livers, Lebanese style, with, again, pretty much similar really with onions and garlic, and put also some other spices and stuff and just eat it like that. But some people don't like the texture of the livers. Interestingly, like one of my daughters, she doesn't like chicken livers, but she really likes chicken liver pate. So if you're a person who doesn't like chicken livers, you might find you actually really get on quite well. If you don't like the chicken livers because of the texture issue, you might find that you really like this because the texture of the pate is really not the same as just chicken livers just cooked. So anyway, so here we go with the onions. This is where it would be great to have, and here's some I prepared earlier, done by my servants in the kitchen, but no servants here. It's all me just slaving away, and you know, we can thank the production team for that. Low budget stuff, and make your presenters work for their fame. Yeah, or whatever it is we're supposed to get from this barakah. Oh yeah, that's it. Despite it being the Algarve, I'm actually looking forward to turning the heat on. Whew. It does get a little bit chilly here at this time of year, there's no doubt. So there's the frying pan. We're going to put in the butter, and we're going to be really generous with this. We're not going to be stingy with the old butter. I probably even need a bit more than that, to be honest. I can't resist a bit of the old olive oil. Not part of my mum's original recipe, but there we go. And I'm just going to chuck these onions in. Again, normally probably just wait for the butter to melt and the oil to melt. I don't really think it matters too much. I just want to get those onions in, to be honest. There we go. So we've got the onions in, and just going to fry those away for a little bit. Brown the onions. Did I see some onion skin in there? Oh, these onions are making me cry. Tidy up as you go along. So there we go. Skins in the compost bowl. And this actually all this stuff goes into my mum's compost heap in the garden, which gets used in the garden, which is fantastic.
My chicken liver pate, I started, let me see, I can tell you probably the year, because I was working for Air France, and the first time I went to Paris to stay with an aunt of mine, well, my mother's cousin. It wasn't a real aunt, it was a sort of cousin of my aunt.
What was her name?
Her name was, well, she was married, her name was Zofia Cybulska, and then she married somebody, Weisberg, but that's another long story, but I won't tell you about that now. Anyway, so it was Zofia Weisberg Cybulska. And she lived in Paris, and I worked for Air France, so I stopped in Paris and went to see her. After the war, it was the sort of first, any sort of member of the family that one managed to meet, because, you know. And she made this chicken liver pate, and I thought it was absolutely delicious. So I got the recipe, and after that I used to start making it, because it's so simple. You know, you normally throw away chicken livers and things, and she made this lovely pate with it, so that's where I got it. And to this day I still make it.
My mum used to grow a lot more stuff here, but she's cut down a lot on all the stuff she used to grow. Okay, so that's the onions on the way. Now, the next thing we need are some eggs. So basically, for every 2 chicken livers, you need 1 egg. You need 1 egg yolk. We're only going to use the yolk of the egg. We're going to boil the eggs, and then we're going to use the yolk of the egg only. And don't worry, we won't waste the egg white. We'll, you know, I chop it up. Personally, that's what I do. Chop it up and mix it with some mayonnaise and chives and a bit of pepper and use it as a sandwich filler. It's great, so it doesn't get wasted. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we need about 5, maybe 5 eggs for all of this. So 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we'll just put another one in. And actually, what we'll do is we'll use the boiled water from the kettle, which will just hurry things along a little bit. Now we're looking here for hard-boiled eggs. So that's going to be about hard-boiled eggs are going to be about 8 or 9 minutes. And they should be fine. Nope. Oops. There we go. And if we put a lid on, just helps things to cook a bit quicker. There we go. So just let these onions cook, soften, separate. Now, this is my innovation. Here's a bit of garlic. Be honest, it doesn't need it. I just really rather like garlic, and so here's the garlic. I'm going to squeeze that in. Actually, I'll do that a little bit later with the livers. So these onions will cook them a bit more. I don't know why, but I'm a bit of a manic cooker. I probably need to calm down a bit, but I sort of stab at stuff and stir it too fast and too hard, and things go flying all over the place. I'm probably a bit more careful at my mum's house, but at home I just create a terrible mess. And to be honest, this clean up as I go along philosophy has been drummed into me by my daughter. Yes, she's the one who's given me such a hard time about all the mess that I've left. And I thought, you know what, if you're going to cook for everybody, you might as well clean up as you go along as well, because then no one really appreciates what you're doing. All they remember is the mess that you've made. And if you're going to help out properly. So I used to think, I'm cooking, I've done the cooking, I'm the king now. Why should I do any washing up and cleaning up? I've done all the cooking. But the cooking's the easy bit, really, in some ways. It's the fun bit. And, shouldn't leave all the hard tasks to others. Now you can see those onions are beginning to brown, which is fine, that's what we want. In the meantime, while I'm waiting for that to cook, I'm going to just get some more onions chopped. A lot of onions in this. I'm going to chop some more onions. These guys are going to go on top. On top of the, as I mentioned already, they're going to go on top of the pate with lots of butter. It's very rich and very tasty. Delicious. And really simple. Chop your finger off. That's that'll do. Onions. I don't know, they give a sweetness and they give a flavour to everything. It's a lot of onions, but then there's also quite a lot of chicken livers as well. So it's all part of what makes it taste just so delicious. And these onions, well, they will really reduce. I mean, it looks like a lot, but once they've been fried and once they've cooked and once the moisture has left it, it's going to be a lot less than what you see here. It's already reduced a lot. And by the time they're fried and they're browned, it's going to be even less. So it looks like a lot, but it's not that much really. So okay, so our onions are just beginning to brown, and now we're going to put the livers in and fry them up with the onions. I'm going to mix it up, turn that heat up a bit. And this is where my garlic goes in. Again, like I said, you don't really need the garlic. It's just something I put in. Now, one thing I do like to make sure is the liver is really well cooked through. I don't like it sort of raw. That's not nice, having a chicken liver pate that's sort of got raw liver in it. Some people might like it like that, but I certainly prefer it cooked. So now I think we could introduce a bit of salt. A bit of pepper. Of course, there is salt in the butter already. And if you feel like it, it's a little sprinkling of chili powder, why not? Just gives it a little zing, but I'm not going to do that. Doesn't need it, but if you like that, why not? That smells nice, mashallah. Another nice thing about chicken livers is they're cheap. It's a couple of quid for a packet of livers like this, which is pretty good. And I'll make a pot of pate that will last me a week. Eggs are boiling. Probably give them 5 minutes. Now, something else that I do that haven't really seen my mum do it, but sometimes what I find is that chicken liver pate can be a bit dry, and I reckon that sometimes if you just fry the livers just like that and keep frying them until they're cooked right through, it dries everything out a bit. So what I often do is I cover the livers and the onions, and it steams it a bit, retains more of the moisture, and cooks the liver through. And that's what I'm actually going to do. So what I might do is move these chicken livers over to a slightly lower heat, and I'm gonna fry up the rest of the onions. More onion frying, again with quite a lot of butter here. All in all, probably that's about 250 grams of butter. maybe about 150 with the onions and the livers, and another 50, 60 for the topping. That's not 250 though, is it? Yeah, something like that. I know people like exact measurements in their recipes, but and you could even put a little bit of olive oil here as well. That's gonna okay, so let's have a look at our chicken livers here. So you can still see a bit of blood in there, but that's cooking away. And look, see what I mean about the moisture, retaining the moisture. I think I'm going to turn this up a little bit. They still need to be fried more. The main thing is we want to get them cooked. I might actually just swap round that and that. Fry that up a little bit more. Yeah. Yep, those are beginning to look cooked through. So I just keep breaking these livers up, get them nicely cooked through. I don't really want to see any pinkness in there. And in the meantime, these onions are gently cooking away. These onions, I'm really going to fry them until they're golden brown, nearly black. So that's going to be a bit of a while. That's just cooking away. Yeah, that's just coming along really nicely, and that's probably actually really nearly ready. So, yep, it's a little bit more probably. Just keep breaking those livers up. And like I said, really no need, I don't think, to sort of spend all that time taking the bit of fat off. And what for? It's fine, perfectly edible. I'll put my improvised lid back on, and I'm pretty sure these eggs have got to be ready. There we go.
I'm getting hungry.
So, what you do with the boiled eggs in order to get them to be able to peel them is, if you can pour really cold water on it, it helps. So I'm actually going to do something very naughty, and this is our cold water. That's really ice cold water, but usually if it's really cold, it really helps peeling the shell off the egg without it sticking, which can be a real pain. So, yeah. And what a smell we've got there from those chicken livers. And that really is now looking, that's it. I mean, that's ready. And that's all of what, 15-20 minutes? It really doesn't take long. The whole thing. It's so delicious, as we'll see later. I'm sure. I mean, that's really done. So I think that works fine. Off with the heat. Off with the heat here, and we just need our onions there to keep cooking. And so just keep stirring those. I want them to cook nice and evenly. So now the eggs. There we go. So if you're lucky, you've got a little air pocket there. I don't think I have, and this looks like it's going to give me a hard time. So the idea of putting it in the cold water is that it's easy to peel. Otherwise, what can happen often is you get a lot of the egg coming away like, oh, now if you can get under that thin skin that's attached to the, and then it just comes off so easily. See the skin coming off there? Oh yes, there we go. One egg. So here we just get the knife and just gently turn it around, and hopefully oh dear, it didn't work. That's fine. It pops out. There we go. One egg yolk. We'll put the white in there. So it should be good to get. Actually, I think we can just put it straight in here. So we're gonna be blending it all up together. And again, that's great. It's just coming off nice and easy. Which I'm very happy about. There we go. Oh dear, this one. Here's an example of a very obstinate eggshell. This is exactly how you don't want it to be. I mean, the egg itself starts to peel away. Look at that. Now you're losing a lot of egg. You don't want that. That's could be the freshness of the egg, or I don't know. Oh dear. Lost a lot of egg there. There we go. These guys are giving me problems now. Oh dear. Lost sight of those onions. I do too much at once. Okay. It's probably more about patience than anything else, to tell you the truth. It does come off, but... Okay, so just gently doesn't really matter because this is all going to get blended up anyway, but there's something sort of aesthetically pleasing about managing to do that. That's it. So we'll use those for some sandwich filler. Chop them up, bit of mayo. But this is what we need now. And this is what we're gonna add a bit more pepper. Let's just try a bit. Bit more salt. And a bit more salt. There we go. So now for the blending operation. So I think for blending we'll bring the blender over here, yeah? What do you want to do? Let's create some space here. I have to get the blender out.
No worries. Cut.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's fine. Cool. Okay. Let's move this. Just a little one, yeah?
Yep. Well, that's all there is really. Oh. Oh my God, bro, that was so close. No, it was. Alhamdulillah, it was all right. Dragged it to the floor and it had smashed. That would have been like. Okay, so this is all I've got here. I'm using whatever I've got, but this is where one of those hand blenders in a bowl really comes into its own, because you can just put this all in a bowl, blend it all together, and it's done. With this little titchy thing here, fine for my mum, she lives on her own. She's gonna, we have to do it in batches. Yes, batches. So I'm actually gonna mix this all up a little bit beforehand, because I want it to be a little bit even. Otherwise you'll get some liver pate that's just liver with no egg, and some that's very eggy. So yeah, so there we go. So that's done. Just put it in our blender here. Probably going to be 3 batches, no point in overdoing it. Oh dear. Things I do. Maybe I'll put more in or less, I don't know. Yeah, thanks, bro. Actually, they're coming along really nicely. It's one of my favourite parts, is these browned, really browned onions. It just gives it a gorgeous flavour. I mean, honestly, you don't even need butter when you have this on toast. It's so thick with butter. It's great just as it is, but if you want to be a bit indulgent, slap the butter on. So those onions are coming along nicely, and this is what we're looking for. Really, like this, nice and browned. Just going to leave them to cook away. So we've got ourselves a dish. It's going to be going in there in stages. So I'm hoping that's all right. There's no bits and pieces in there. It looks smooth. It looks great. It looks great. So I'm happy. Consistency looks wonderful. I am so looking forward to breakfast tomorrow morning. I wasn't hungry, but I'm hungry now, mashallah. So let's get these little bits in here. And back we go through the quite laborious process.
This time, can you show us the consistency of the paste?
Yeah, sure. All right. Okay, so here we go. For batch number 2. It's obviously a special technique for doing this thing. Finding out as I go along. complete concentration on my part. So it still needs some more. If you're looking in there, still a bit lumpy, I think you can see. So I want it smooth. This is how I'm looking for it to be, really smooth there. So this has got a way to go. Again, hand blender, 19 quid, get a cheap one. Wonderful implement to have in the kitchen. Or spend a bit more, why not? Use it a lot if you do a lot of cooking. Although you probably didn't hear a word of that with all the zzz, zzz, zzz. There is no haste in this particular, it's just have to take the time to do it. This is getting boring. Oh yeah, that'll do. That's pretty good. Okay, so you're gonna scoop this out and in it goes into the pot. Oh yeah. Oh my God. Those onions are just awesome. That's it, they're fine. So just scooping it out here. I'll polish off and make it look nice at the end. So okay, so hopefully this is the last lot we'll have to do, inshallah. Oh, I need the blade would be helpful. Okay, so in it goes the final lot. There we go. And I think alhamdulillah the bowl is just the right size. Go. Is that done? There. Okay. So I'm just going to push this all down, flatten it out, fill the air gaps hopefully. There we go. And I think that's it. Yeah. Have a battle of spatulas. You don't need to get too sophisticated with this, to be honest, because the butter and onions are just going to go right on top, and that'll do. And let's just clean this. I'm sure the expert cooks would, you know, use a cloth like this. There you go, you know, just to look pro. But it's fine. And finally, what we do is we cover this. Look at that butter and oil just going on top, and our onions. So, as I said, what that does is that just stops the pate drying out. Stops the pate drying out. You keep it in the fridge and cover it. And the butter and onion just keeps it nice and moist, and actually just gives it a gorgeous and that's it. That's chicken liver pate. So we're gonna just leave it out for a little bit to cool. We don't want to put it in the fridge like really hot. Just leave it for an hour, and then we'll put it in the fridge, and tomorrow morning, inshallah, it's going to be ready to put on some delicious local rustic mafra bread, and just going to ready to go to sleep and get up in the morning, pray fajr and have some pate on toast. Alhamdulillah.